Well, believe it or not, trout season is right around the corner, and fly fishing is a great way to spend time on the stream. I visited a fly tying workshop to learn a bit about the art of tying flies. The class featured tips and instruction from 3 top-notch fly tyers, including renowned UP fly fisherman Arlen Sun.
When you can tie and then go on the river and you catch fish on that lights up the eyes. You bet.
And we'll take a trip to Lake Gogebic in search of giant perch. That's all tonight, so sit back, put your feet up. It's Monday night and time for discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
There's a lot of reasons fishermen fish with a fly rod. It's an art, a craft, and a science all rolled into one. For some, it's about tying your own flies and then watching something you made coax a trout onto the end of your line.
Little black caddis.
I promised myself that this summer I would learn to fly fish, and I have full intentions of keeping that promise. So when I heard about the free fly tying workshop at Northwoods Wilderness Outfitters in Iron Mountain, I immediately marked it on my calendar. The class featured tips and instruction from 3 top-notch fly tyers, including renowned UP fly fisherman Arlen Sun.
I got started about 30 years ago. My mom did all our tying for us. And I was 11 years old when I started fly fishing, and my mom started tying, and she basically tied just the Adams, Coachman streamers, just a few different flies. But I wanted to get into more of a variety for myself, so I got the books and the equipment, and I started tying. Right now I'm tying about 53, 54 different patterns, and I move a lot of them right out from my house. I sell a lot of them, but I've been tying, like I say, about 30, 35 years. It's a good hobby, especially in the wintertime. Evenings, that's what I do. There's an interest behind every fly, and with all the patterns I'm tying, I need a lot of material, but I'll set up my table and I'll stay on one pattern until I get about 3-4 dozen tied, then I keep switching. But when you're doing something like this, you get an interest in your mind, and it's a goal all the time, And what really works is when you get out on the river and you catch something with it. When I first tied that merger last year and I first tried it out and I hit 4 nice browns, it made me a believer, and that's what I like to do. I like to prove my flies. What we'll do is we'll put together an Adams, which is the most popular fly in my fly box. And it's a number 12 Adams. Get a little base on here. Put a little hitch on there to secure it. The wings are off of a barred rock chicken. Get them on, get them evened up so they look natural. The wings have got to be pretty much in proportion to the size of the shank. Put a little half hitch in there, secure it. Now we go back and put the tail on. tail would be a mix of Rhode Island red and barred rock. A little half hitch in there to hold them. The tail has got to be in proportion, about the same size, same length as the wings. A little wax on the thread. This is muskrat dubbing, taken off of a muskrat hide. Make a nice body, nice and uniform. Okay, we got that. Now we need the hackle to keep them afloat. Hard rock and Rhode Island red. Put them on together. Half hitch so she stays in position. That Adams will impersonate about any mayfly, like your Hendrickson, light dark Cahill. It's a fly that is very much used in our areas. We'll throw a little half hitch in there and secure it. Now we put the brown through. It's a good representation of our mayflies. Hold that thread back so we don't cut it. Now I make a little head on it. Whip finish it off. Head cement on her so she doesn't come apart. That fly will never untie. That's the hottest fly in my fly box.
This is your basic pattern. It's a little bit variation from what most people use. I get it to look a little more natural, and it's very, very effective. And I change the colors according to what fish are running, what eggs are found in the river. Early in the year, I'll want to go with pinks, maybe some off colors for the dead eggs that you do see. And then more towards fall, when the browns and bigger fish like that, salmon, I'll go with more of like an orange or an off orange kind of color like that. I kind of keep that in a pretty big clump. You put about 6 to 8 real good wraps in the middle. That'll secure it, keep it from rolling up. Then I just kind of flare it back. And I'll keep just a little bit behind the eye, and that'll also keep it from rolling. It'll keep it from tearing away. If you get a steelhead or a brown or a fish with some pretty good teeth, it won't tear it up too bad. I don't need to have a crazy whip finish or anything like that. The glue will kind of hold it, so I just run a few quick half hitches, and then the next part, we're just going to trim it up and kind of give it that natural clumpy look. And you can kind of just take each little piece, kind of pull it out, and then just kind of round it, trim it, and you don't want it to be a perfect circle. Like I said, you want it to look like that clump or row that's released from the female, and then you want it to have that roundish look. When you do these, you want to wet it so you can actually see what it looks like in the water. And you can use this all the way through wintertime into spring. This is a very effective pattern for steelhead. Salmon will take it. I've even caught cohos on it. I've caught a few walleyes on these. But that's basically it. It's a pretty simple pattern, pretty effective, and that's basically it. That's called your clown egg.
All right, what we're going to do here is a little tube fly tying for pike and muskie. This seems to be kind of the new thing, especially over in Europe. They're tying a lot of tube flies. This is a gel spun Vivus string. It's really strong. It's actually a little bit better than Kevlar. I got about a 2.5 inch piece of tube on here. We're going to tie a replot stinger. Okay, I got these sandwiched in between here, and I'm going to go tie these off to one side. Use kind of a soft wrap at first, and then you can pull down on this stuff pretty tightly. Get a few more wraps going here. Get that locked down. I'm aiming these feathers to the inside. You can flare them out if you want, and we'll do the same thing on the other side of the fly. They do make special vices for tube fly tying. If you're going to tie these especially, I would go with just a tube fly vise. They're a little bit easier to tie off of. But I'm going to wind this down pretty tight, wrap up some of that stuff. Then of course the best thing to do is get a little cement head and lock that down a little bit. After almost every tie you want to do something like that. It helps keep everything nice and tight. Then I'm going to use a little bit of raccoon. Raccoon is a little longer than rabbit, a little lighter actually. Really acts good in the water. I'm going to take about 1.5 inches or a little bit longer piece, and I'm going to cut that off. Then what you do is take a comb You kind of comb out some of the underfur. It does get webby, and that stuff will make the fly really heavy in the water. What I also like to do on the end here, taper this up a little bit. It makes it a lot easier to tie in. A little drop of glue in there doesn't hurt anything right now. And what I'm going to do is just palmer this forward on here. And as you do this, you want to make that hair rake to the back as much as you can. You can wind this down pretty tight. Again, another drop of glue. Now I'm going to put a little crystal flash in there, about half a dozen strands, about all you need. And you usually want to kind of make these ends a little uneven so that they're not square end. About halfway up, tie these in. What I'm going to do is flare these out a little bit now so that they cover half of the fly up basically. Bring these around. I'm going to flare them up on this side too. Kind of tying in the round here is what you want. A little bit of action all over the place. I'm going to go with another color, going off to the side here a little bit. This next piece you want to make a little bit longer, probably 2 inches long. Put a little bit of different color in there. Once in a while, some of these clips come in handy. You can kind of hold some of your materials to the rear. We'll go with another yellow. Repeating the other steps that I did. Just gives you a little more length overall fly. I personally like a little bit of squirrel tail on the front. Gives it that little bit of gill looking head stuff there. A couple wraps, and then I'm going to just fan that out with my thumbnail. About half of it. I'm going to tie two groups in here. Tighten that down a little bit more. Put some eyes on there, just that they stick a little bit. You use some UV cure here, and you just hit it with the torch a little bit. That should hold that for now. Likewise on the bottom. Then I just do a little bit more to build up the head, even it out here a little bit. Tends to lock everything down tight, and you don't have to worry about stuff coming apart. I'm going to release the mandrel, the center there, trim some of this hair stuff up here. I'm going to just cut that tube back just a little bit, stick the mandrel back in, take a lighter, make that tube kind of roll back up on itself a little bit there. That way it's nice and soft, smooth up front. Then in the back, comes with a little bit larger diameter soft tubing. Cut yourself about a little ½ inch or so. Shoot a little glue down in there. Then on the tail end, you want to put that right in there. You run your fluorocarbon through there and on up through the tube, and that way when the fish hits, the tube will usually pop off, slide up your line. You can use any size hook you want that way. So there you have it. That's a tube fly.
Well, standing in a quiet river with a trout on one end of your rod and your hand on the other might be a warming thought right now, but unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. So my son Jordy and I paid a visit to fishing guide Tim Long at the Timbers Resort on the shores of giant Lake Gogebic to see if we could scare up any of those jumbo perch I keep hearing about.
We're out here fishing on Lake Gogebic, catching some pretty nice yellow perch. I mean, I've seen them come up to 16 inches out of here. Very nice. Right now, what the deal is that they're staging, getting ready to spawn. So we're targeting these transition areas off the steep breaks where it transitions into the mud. And these perch are down there feeding on the wigglers that are coming up out of the mud. Wiggler is the mayfly that we see in the during the open water season. Sometimes they'll have a mat over the entire lake, but that's what these guys are down there feeding on.
Jumbo perch on Lake Gogebic.
While I'm sitting here, I'm watching my Vexlar. I like to, I'll back reel a little bit here. I'll drop it back down into the mud. And I got a dropper on here, so I have a weight above my jig. And I'm watching my sonar unit here, and I'm dropping my jig down into that mud and shaking it up a little bit. Just pounding it. And we did this during the Mark Martin Ice Fishing School here with the walleyes. This is no different than walleye fishing in that respect, where you want to stir it up and it causes a little commotion, that plume rising up off bottom there, and bring it up. But this is a much more subtle presentation where I'm just, as you can see, I got kind of this is an ultralight rod. A noodle rod is probably even a better choice, but I'm just kind of rolling it down there. I'm not really jigging it, but I'm just rolling it, just keeping that tip wiggling a little bit. Dead sticking. I got another rod right next to me here that's we call dead sticking, and it's just hanging there. And every once in a while, I'll come over here and just tap it a little bit like that, just to get a little movement out of it. And I can actually see both marks, both jigs down there with the Vexlar in this hole. I've had some fish coming in on me that were 5-6 feet off bottom. I raised it up to them. I spooked them. They went away. But sometimes you can just bring it up to them, and they'll be all over it. A lot of local folks that fish Lake Gogebic, basically, they have their shacks up on the north end of the lake in the bay, shallow area. It's weedy. We have a good walleye population in this lake, and everyone is pretty much tip-up fishing out there. They're using sucker minnows or shiners or fatheads or whatever, but they're tip-up fishing. Big reason for that is because they have their permanent shacks set out there. They have to jack them up to get them off the ice because of the amount of snow that we get on this lake. Once you punch a hole there, and the ice is concave, once you punch a hole, the water comes up. So you got to keep the ice shacks jacked up in the air, and they don't want to have holes for jigging in their shacks because they'll have a flooded area. So they're basically all tip-up fishing, and it produces. It's a very good technique for guys to be out there walleye fishing. Low light conditions, you get a morning bite and an evening bite, and they're very successful doing that. Now when you're going to go perch fishing, it's about using your electronics and being as mobile as possible. You can't just punch a hole and drop your line down there and be jigging blind. You have to use your electronics to see when the fish are coming in, at what level they're coming in, and then you adjust your jigging or your techniques or your size depending upon how the fish reacts to that. It was 20 below zero this morning, and it's probably around zero or maybe a little bit above right now. Otherwise, I would like to be out here, punch 100 holes and be fishing outside and bouncing around from hole to hole to hole to locate active fish, or just locate fish on the screen. That's how I would prefer to do it. We got some pretty good wind out here, and it's darn cold, so we're sitting in the shacks and waiting for the fish to come to us.
This must be a male here. That's what jumbo perch is all about.
what you want for perch fishing is either a super ultralight or a noodle rod. You want that flex in there like this. You're not feeling the strike, you're seeing it with your rod tip. So you want a really light, flexible rod tip. A lot of guys are putting spring bobbers on here, and they will extend off the tip of their rod there, past the last eye, and they're super sensitive, so you'll see that just go down like that.
That's a nice fish. That's a nice fish.
You got another one?
Yep.
Come on, man. Nice job. But those big perch, they're coming up after these spoons. They're not really too intimidated. Although that last fish I caught, I had one or two come in before that. They came right up to it, looked at it, and went away. So then I downsized to a smaller jig, and it seemed to be the ticket. Look at that perch. Look at that perch. Oh my God. That was probably about a 13.5-inch perch, female. You know, I set the hook on it, and I had my drag set kind of light, so that's what we get on Lake Gogebic. As long as you're taking your time, bring that fish up relatively slow, they're gonna be fine to release. So I just dropped down to this smaller jig. I was using something a little bit more mammoth because of the size of these guys, girls. And this isn't even as big as they get. So this one is actually in real good shape because I took my time with her. She's just fine. She didn't blow her stomach. So this is a good spawning female. I'm gonna release this fish. Right down she goes.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed watching. We'll see you next week right here on Discovering.